Yo, it's Anthony, and today I just wanted to share some of my copywriting books that have helped me, improve my craft, and let's just jump right into it. So the first book that I recommend highly is this one. It's called John Carlton's Kick-Ass Copywriting Secrets of a Marketing Rebel. Now this dude, I never knew advertising writing can be so exciting to read until I actually read some of his works, where I'm like, wow, I'm not interested in self-defense, but now maybe I should consider it, type of kind. And what he does is, it goes from his perspective on how to write copywriting, of how someone who had absolute no knowledge in copywriting when he was like 31 just became a world-class copywriter, and the insights that he has, and it's just very easy to read, and it's a bit of an investment. It was like, what, $100, but I think it was worth it, so you should consider it out, all right? So the second book that I have here is this one right here. Now this one cost even more for me. It's like a textbook of copywriting. It's called Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene M. Schwartz. And it cost me a pretty penny. It was like, what, $200 on Amazon, right? Like a year ago. And the thing about this book is it is the driest book filled with diamonds. That's the best way to put it. You see, this type of book is, the better you get at copywriting, the more information you can extract. Now that sounds pretty cool, but basically he has a really dry, it's like, the only reason I could get through was because of all the insights that he has. But it is like an English book where it's kind of boring to read, but the amount of information this thing has, like I probably didn't even dissect half of it, and I read through it twice or three times already. So I considered buying this if you're really serious about copywriting, because even though it costs like what, $200, $300 for me, the amount of investment that you could get back just from reading this, I say it could probably double or triple your investments. All right. So the third book that I recommend is, I actually don't have a hard copy of it. I only have an ebook version. It's called The Boron Letters by Gary Halbert. And the reason why I really like this is basically a story from his dad, who's in prison, talking to his son via letters about how to grow up, how to do marketing, how to make money with marketing. And since it was directed to his kid, it's very easy to read. It's actually pretty fun to read, and it just gives his insight of how to improve life. And even though you may not agree with all of it, the fact that he was someone who was very successful in copywriting is just it's just enough reason to read his perspective on how to be a better copywriter. All right. Now we're on to the fourth book, okay? All right. So this is a dinosaur, okay? This is The 7 Steps to Freedom by Benjamin D. Suarez. All right. I was a bit skeptical on buying this because I did not I thought it was just about business building, from the 1980s, 1970s, where it has all these things where it's not really relevant anymore. But what it really did was, not only was it about how someone who had no clue on copywriting, how he became a successful copywriter, and his tips and stuff. The reason that really opened my eyes was how hard it was to start a business in the 1980s and 70s compared to today. Like, I did not expect how hard it was until I actually read about how to start it, how to save up for the funds, the topics you can choose, and all this other stuff where it's just, oh my God, it doesn't realize how grateful you are about how easier, business is nowadays until you have read this book. And plus, the insights that he gives in copywriting is more than enough to buy this book. All right? Even though it's a dinosaur, I recommend you get this book. Okay, now the fifth book I recommend is this one. It's called Tested Advertising Methods by John Caples. And the reason why I really like this book was because it's basically like a how-to informational guide from the perspective of another famous copywriter. And it's just, if the breakthrough advertising was like a boring, dry, insight full of wisdom, this is more like an informational how-to. Like the step one, here's how to write a headline, all right? And this is how you do it. Step two, this is how you write your first sentence. And the reason why I really like this was because it gives you another perspective on how someone thought about copywriting, how they were able to make it successful for their own. And this one is a lot easier to read. It's a lot, It's a lot more straightforward. You don't have to, think about philosophy when you're reading this. It's just straight one. Here's how you do it, and this is what you do, all right? And this is how you turn it for your specific niche. All right, the second to last book I recommend is How to Write a Good Advertisement by Victor O. Schwab. Okay, so this book is basically like the last book. It's like an informational how to write copywriting, how to do marketing well. This is the steps of how to write copywriting and do it well. And the reason why I like this is because there's a part where it gives you 100 headlines that have worked successfully for him. And the thing about it is that it tells you why it was successful and why it didn't work. Like with headlines, you got to split test, see what works out. But when you see the one that works out and you can figure out why it worked out, you can use that pattern for your own existing headlines. So even though this was like the headlines in the 50s, 60s, 70s, I actually don't know, okay? But even though it's from a long time ago, the fact that these headlines used to work, and if you can figure out why they worked, you can apply it for your own specific niche and market. And then you just, you change it up, for whatever the trends are, and then boom, you got a good headline. And of course, it's not just about headlines. He also goes about how to write copy and how to do this. It's just another example of a famous copywriting, writing their thoughts on copywriting. Okay, the last book I recommend is the Robert Collier letter book, okay? So this book was, out of all the 7 books I recommended, this is probably my least favorite. But what I really liked about it was, even though it was in the 1930s where the language was kind of flowery and kind of weird, the thing that I really liked about it was he was like the father of direct mail, which is basically the way to make money with copywriting, okay? So even though there was no Google AdWords or Facebook ads or YouTube ads, this dude had to write letters and then send it manually, or had his team send it manually to people, and you would have to split test and you had to analyze the data, which is a lot harder to do back then than it is nowadays. But the reason why I really like it was because he shows us copywriting principles that he used in the 1930s that have worked. And what happened was Gary Halbert actually used some of these principles from the 1930s to make it work for him in the 1980s. And I'm pretty sure you can make it work for, whatever the year it is, 2020, 2030. And the thing that, even though it's kind of boring to read, I noticed that a lot of the copywriting principles in this book overlapped with a lot of these other famous copywriters, which comes as no surprise, all right? So even though each book here, has a famous copywriter writing their own perspective on copywriting, most of them just share the same premise, which is, this is how you grab people's attention, this is how you get people to read it, and this is how you get people to buy your product. And the cool thing about this is, even though that each one has a different perspective or a different formula of how they were, they were thinking about this stuff, it all comes down to the same point. And just from having these, the reason why I recommend that you read like multiple books like this is because even though that this book may not click for you, but if you read this book, it may click for you. And the fact that you're reading all these different perspectives of famous copywriters helps you, understand it a little bit more, and just maybe one of these books will just click it for you, and you just know how to write a headline, how to write something better, how to get that next product sold with your writing. And that's why I recommend that you actually just, you could, there's a lot of other good copywriting books. I recommend you check these out first, all right? And that's it. That's what I got for today, all right? I hope you found something useful. If you read one of these books, tell me which one is your favorite in the comments below. It'd be cool if you subscribe. I can't even say subscribe properly. All right. See you later.